Millionaire CEO spilled coffee on a young woman. What she did next. Silence the entire coffee shop. When the coffee spilled, she didn't yell. She didn't step back. She didn't look around for help. She knelt on the floor, and the coffee shop went silent. James Lockwood froze with the cup still in his hand. He'd expected anger, or embarrassment, or at least a reaction he could fix with money. This wasn't any of those things. The stains spread across her dress. Dark, obvious, impossible to ignore. People stopped talking mid-sentence. Someone whispered. Someone else looked away. If you believe in compassion and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment to like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us how one small act can change everything. She picked up a napkin from the floor, then another, and another, not to save herself, but to clean the mess he'd caused. James opened his mouth to apologize, to offer cash, to call the manager, to regain control of the moment. Nothing came out. The barista didn't move. No one laughed. No one filmed. It felt like the room was holding its breath, waiting to see who she really was. She stood up slowly, met James's eyes for just a second. No anger, no gratitude, only calm. Then she walked out of the coffee shop, leaving the stain behind, leaving James unsettled, and leaving a question hanging in the air. Why did that moment change everything? The coffee shop slowly came back to life, but nothing felt normal anymore. James Lockwood stood there for a moment longer than he should have, watching the door she had just walked through. He was used to rooms moving around him, not freezing because of him. People usually adjusted, apologized to him, or waited for him to speak. This time, the silence lingered, heavy and uncomfortable. James was known for moving fast. He ran meetings the same way he walked through the city, always a step ahead, always certain the next problem could be solved with the right decision or the right amount of money. That morning had been no different. He had stepped into the coffee shop between calls, barely listening to the barista, already thinking about the meeting he was late for. The coffee had just been another detail, until it wasn't. Across the room, people whispered without really whispering. Some recognized him. Others just sensed authority in the way he stood, frozen but composed. Expensive watch catching the light. A man like that wasn't supposed to look unsettled over a simple accident. Yet his expression hadn't changed since she left. It was as if something had slipped out of place inside him, and he didn't know how to put it back. What unsettled him most wasn't the spill. It was the absence of blame. He had been ready for anger, embarrassment, even a scene. Those were familiar. Those had rules. What he wasn't prepared for was dignity without demand. The way she had knelt down, quietly, without making herself smaller or louder, had pulled the ground from under him. The barista finally moved, cleaning the counter, forcing a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. James paid for the coffee without really noticing the amount. He nodded out of habit, not because he felt done with the moment. The stain was gone from the floor now, but it stayed sharp in his mind, replaying in ways he didn't fully understand yet. Outside, traffic passed like nothing had happened. Inside, James felt strangely exposed. He realized he didn't even know her name. He didn't know where she was going or why she hadn't reacted like everyone else would have. And for the first time in a long while, not knowing something bothered him more than losing control. He sat down instead of leaving, his phone buzzing with missed calls he ignored for once. Around him, conversations resumed, but quieter, as if everyone was pretending the moment hadn't just shifted something real. James stared at the empty chair across from him, replaying the calm in her eyes, wondering where that kind of strength came from. And as the seconds passed, one thought kept returning, sharper each time. If she hadn't asked for anything, if she hadn't needed anything from him, then why did he feel like he was the one who had just been challenged? That question stayed with him, pulling him forward, even as he finally stood up and headed for the door. James Lockwood finally pushed the coffee shop door open, expecting the moment to dissolve once he stepped outside, but it didn't. The city felt louder, brighter, more rushed, and somehow more distant than it had just minutes before. He spotted her halfway down the block, walking quickly, holding her bag close, her pace steady despite the stain still visible on her dress. She wasn't looking back, and that unsettled him more than if she had. He hesitated for a second, long enough to tell himself this was unnecessary. He had a meeting, a schedule, a day already mapped out. Still, something deeper than logic nudged him forward. He followed her at a respectful distance, not hiding, not announcing himself either, unsure of what he planned to say if she turned around. This wasn't how he usually operated, and that alone made his pulse quicken. She stopped near a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. James slowed his steps, pretending to check his phone. Up close, he noticed details he hadn't seen in the coffee shop. The wear on her shoes. The way she smoothed the fabric of her dress without frustration, just acceptance. She looked like someone used to adapting, not complaining. Someone who didn't expect the world to bend around her. When the light changed, a man beside her dropped a box he was carrying. Papers spilled across the sidewalk, some sliding dangerously close to traffic. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, kneeling again, gathering the papers while cars honked impatiently. The man stammered apologies, clearly embarrassed. She smiled, calm and reassuring, telling him it was fine, that these things happened. James watched the scene unfold, his chest tightening. This was the moment that shifted everything. It wasn't about one quiet reaction in a coffee shop anymore. This was a pattern, a way of moving through the world that didn't change depending on who was watching. He realized she hadn't noticed him at all, and somehow that made the moment feel more real. When she stood and handed the papers back, the man thanked her and rushed off. She adjusted her bag and continued walking, never acknowledging the small crowd that had briefly formed. James stayed rooted in place, the realization settling in slowly but firmly. Whatever had drawn him out of the coffee shop wasn't curiosity anymore. It was something closer to recognition. He understood then that following her wasn't about fixing a mistake or easing guilt. It was about confronting something he hadn't faced in years. Her simple choice to stop, to help, to move on without expecting anything, had quietly pulled him into a story he hadn't planned to enter. And as she disappeared into the next block, James felt the weight of a decision forming. He could turn back now, return to his world, and let this become just another strange moment. Or he could keep walking, even if he didn't yet know where it would lead. James kept walking, even after she turned the corner, his pace slower now, weighed down by a feeling he couldn't quite name. It wasn't guilt in the usual sense, and it wasn't attraction either, at least not yet. It was the uncomfortable awareness that something ordinary had exposed a crack in how he moved through the world. For years, he had solved problems from a distance, writing checks, delegating responsibility, believing that efficiency was the same as care. Watching her disappear made that belief feel thinner than ever. He stopped near the edge of the block, pretending to read a notification while actually replaying every second of the morning. The spill, the silence, the way she had lowered herself to the floor without shrinking. The city didn't pause for moments like that, yet somehow it had paused for him. He realized that if no one had been watching, she would have done the same thing. That realization unsettled him more deeply than any public confrontation could have. Across the street, she sat on a bench for a brief moment, adjusting her bag and checking her phone. James noticed her shoulders tense, just slightly, as if the calm she carried came at a cost. This wasn't someone floating through life untouched. This was someone holding herself together, choosing patience even when it would have been easier to let go. For the first time, he wondered what kind of weight she carried when no one was looking. James thought about his own day, already planned down to the minute. Meetings about growth, calls about numbers, decisions that would affect people he never saw. He had always told himself that impact mattered more than presence. Standing there now, watching a stranger quietly breathe through a difficult moment, that idea began to feel incomplete. Impact without connection suddenly felt hollow. She stood again, the stain still visible, and crossed the street toward a modest building with a faded sign near the door. James stayed where he was, his instinct telling him not to follow further. This wasn't his space. Whatever she was dealing with didn't need his interruption. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that turning away now would mean returning unchanged. And that thought sat heavier than missing any meeting ever could. He checked his phone and saw the missed calls piling up, messages growing sharper in tone. Normally, that would have triggered a quick response, a shift back into control. Instead, he silenced the device and slipped it into his pocket. The world he understood would still be there later. The moment in front of him wouldn't. James leaned against the cool glass of a storefront, staring at the building she had entered. For the first time in years, he felt small, not in a humiliating way, but in a human one. He wasn't the most important person in this story. He might not even be necessary. And that realization opened a quiet fear he hadn't expected to feel. As he finally turned to leave, a single question followed him down the street, refusing to let go. If kindness came so naturally to her, what had he been practicing all these years instead? That question, once planted, made it impossible to return to the day he had planned. James didn't expect to see her again that day, which is why it felt almost unreal when he did. Hours later, after rescheduling the meeting he had been rushing to, he found himself walking past the same neighborhood on his way back to the office. The city looked different now, less like a backdrop and more like a series of small lives moving at their own pace. As he slowed near a corner coffee shop, he noticed her standing just inside the window, speaking softly to someone on a laptop screen. She wasn't meeting friends or waiting for anyone. She was working. James recognized the posture immediately, the focused calm of someone listening more than talking. Through the glass, he could see sketches spread across the table, clean lines and notes written in careful handwriting. It surprised him how ordinary and grounded the scene felt. This wasn't someone drifting through the day. This was someone building something, quietly, on her own terms. He stayed outside longer than he meant to, watching her nod, gesture gently toward the screen, and smile at the right moments. Whatever she was doing, it mattered to the person on the other end. When the call ended, she closed the laptop and exhaled, rubbing her temples for just a second before straightening again. The weight he had sensed earlier was real, and she carried it without complaint. Inside, she gathered her things and stepped back onto the sidewalk. James turned away instinctively, unsure whether being noticed would break something fragile. As she passed, he caught fragments of her conversation on the phone, words like layouts, timelines, and client feedback drifting past him. It clicked then. She wasn't waiting for life to happen. She was actively shaping it, one decision at a time. Later that evening, curiosity finally pushed him to ask questions he wasn't used to asking. Through a mutual acquaintance who volunteered locally, James learned that she worked remotely as an interior design consultant, meeting clients online and setting her own schedule. Between calls, she spent time at a nearby community center, not because she had to, but because she chose to. The simplicity of that choice struck him harder than any dramatic reveal could have. The realization shifted how he remembered the coffee shop incident. She hadn't been passive. She had been deliberate. Kneeling down hadn't been about accepting blame or avoiding conflict. It had been about refusing to let a moment of chaos define her day. James felt a mix of admiration and discomfort settle in, the kind that signals growth trying to break through resistance. That night, James sat alone in his apartment, staring out at the city lights instead of answering emails. He thought about how often he'd mistaken independence for isolation and generosity for obligation. She challenged those assumptions without ever speaking them aloud. The contrast between their worlds felt sharper now, not because of money, but because of intention. As he prepared for bed, one thought kept circling back, refusing to quiet down. If someone could live that openly, that deliberately kind, what excuse did he have for staying distant? He didn't know yet what he would do with that question, only that it had lodged itself firmly in his mind, waiting for an answer he wasn't ready to give. James didn't announce himself at the community center, and that choice mattered more than he realized at the time. He showed up the next afternoon dressed like anyone else. No suit, no driver waiting outside, just a quiet presence standing near the entrance as people moved in and out. The building was modest, worn in places, but alive with motion and voices that felt real in a way boardrooms never did. He watched her from a distance as she helped organize supplies, greeting everyone by name, moving with calm purpose. What surprised him most was how little attention she seemed to draw to herself. There was no performance in her kindness, no pause to see if anyone noticed. She listened more than she spoke, leaned in when people talked, and never rushed anyone, even when time clearly mattered. James realized this wasn't charity the way he was used to understanding it. This was presence, and it required something he hadn't practiced in years. Instead of stepping forward with offers or solutions, James chose to do something unfamiliar. He stayed. He carried boxes. He asked where things went, and followed instructions without trying to improve the system. The work was simple, almost mundane, but it demanded attention. As minutes turned into hours, he felt a strange